And I was a business owner for 10 years and I hated doing my books and keeping up with all that, but I had to make peace with it because it's just part of what you have to do to be successful as a business owner. But it can also help you when it comes to getting financing or, taking advantage of opportunities. And I do think in 2021, we're going to see a lot of opportunities later in the year for small businesses.
The following is brought to you by Thryv, the end-to-end client experience platform that helps you get the job, manage the job, and get credit.
Hello, I'm Gordon Henry, and this is Winning on Main Street. We've been focusing in 2021 on actionable tactics and tips that you as a small business can use. Not things you can think about, not things you can listen to, but things you can use. And this week we have a fantastic guest, a savvy expert who can help you run your business better by giving you actionable answers to your credit questions, areas like money and finance and debt. Her name is Gerri Detweiler, and she's in Sarasota, Florida. Welcome, Gerri.
Oh, thank you, Gordon. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. And Gerri is the education director at a firm called Nav, which is an online marketplace matching small business owners to financing. She's the author of 5 books on credit and financing. And you can also find her at gerridetweiler.com. That's Gerri Detweiler, Detweiler.com. So Gerri, let's get started. We're here in March of 2021, a lot going on. We hopefully have a light at the end of the tunnel with this pandemic, with all the vaccines coming online, and they've just passed a new stimulus bill. Tell us a little bit about the stimulus bill and specifically how it's going to help small businesses and how small businesses can take advantage.
Yes. So there are several ways that the stimulus bill will help small business owners. Most of them are an extension or an expansion of what we've had in the previous stimulus legislation. So we have more funding for PPP. We have more funding for the EIDL advances or grants. We have an extension of the employee retention credit, pandemic unemployment, et cetera. The new part is really this restaurant revitalization fund or grant program for restaurants. And what I'm excited about is that Congress recognized that it takes the time for the SBA to get these things up and going. And so they're allowing restaurants who are interested in these new restaurant grants to also apply for PPP. So previously, we have the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, which is for live theater venues, museums, aquariums, places like that. That came out in the legislation that passed at the end of December, and we still don't have the money available to businesses. And they were told, choose this or PPP. Well, now they can apply with confidence, apply for PPP, and then apply for the grant and just subtract the amount out if they get PPP as well. So I think it's going to be a really crucial assistance for many small businesses. And I'm pretty excited that we have this round to hopefully get us through to that, place where we're getting back to normal.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm a restaurant and I haven't taken advantage of this before, and can I come in for the first time on this? Do I have to have done it before?
Yeah, the great news is, with the exception of the targeted EIDL grants, you can apply for the first time. So if you missed out on PPP, you can apply. And in fact, they've recently, literally just in the last week, they've changed the calculation for self-employed people who want to apply for PPP. So we're finding that many people who said, hey, I couldn't get PPP before, now I can, they're rushing to meet the current deadline of March 31st for PPP. Now, I anticipate Congress is going to extend that. There's just so many applications pending right now that I think they will extend it, but I'm saying don't wait, get your application in. And the only people I would say are shut out largely from a lot of this aid is startup businesses. So if you started up your business after the pandemic hit, you're not going to find a lot there, although the employee retention credit, a tax credit, is going to be available to startups. So there are some things that may be helpful to you.
Okay. And how much money are most of the businesses who are applying able to apply for? What's sort of the range that somebody can apply for?
Well, it depends on the program that you are applying for, but
Hmm.
with PPP, the first draw is up to a total of 10 million, but for most businesses, it's much less than that because you're applying on 2.5 times your average monthly payroll.
Okay.
Or if you're self-employed, your maximum amount for most self-employed people is going to be $20,833. Very specific number,
Hmm.
but that's based on your capping out at $100,000 in annual compensation. So it depends, on the business and how much payroll you have, how much you will get. In the second round of PPP, there is more money for certain businesses like restaurants. And then we have these grants, which are going to be based on the revenue loss of the business and could be significant, particularly for some restaurants, because if I'm recalling correctly, the caps out at $10 million. So that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Yeah, for sure. And last question on this. To apply, if I haven't, somebody who hasn't applied yet, doesn't know where to go, where do they go to apply? Is it sba.gov? What's the place?
Sure. So if you're applying for an EIDL or an economic injury disaster loan or grant, you have to go through the SBA, the SBA.gov website. But everything else, they've well, that's not true. The shuttered venue operators grant and the restaurant revitalization grants, those will go through the SBA as well. So SBA.gov. But for PPP, you're going to actually apply through a lender. And at NAV, we've been matching borrowers to lenders at nav.com.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, thank you for shifting to your business. So, what's your role in this at nav.com? Do you help businesses navigate their way through PPP, EIDL, that type of thing? You find them alternate sources? What's your role?
Yes, I have spent many, many hours reading and parsing the legislation and answering questions about these programs. But my goal overall at NAV is to help business owners be more creditworthy and find financing. So that's what I try to teach them is, hey, and the small business credit and financing is so confusing. There's so many
Mm.
more options than there are on the consumer side, but there's so little regulation. So they don't have to give you a free business credit report. They don't have to tell you what the APR is in the most cases on financing. They can use all kinds of other terminology that can make it seem very affordable when it's actually very expensive.
Mm.
So as an education director, my goal is to try to help business owners navigate this and explain it in a way that hopefully will help them make better choices and find what they need for their business.
Okay, great. So let's shift gears a little bit. Businesses have credit scores too, just like consumers, and they get into trouble with things like credit monitoring. Tell us, what are some of the biggest credit mistakes that small businesses typically make?
Well, my experience is that most business owners have no idea these business credit bureaus are out there. There's no
Mm.
requirement that you get your permission before they check your business credit. They don't have to tell you if they turn you down based on it. There's no free business credit reports required by law. So most business owners just don't have a clue. And so what happens is then something happens where they discover that, oh, and in fact, I just talked to a business owner this week who said she got turned down for some commercial financing due to something on her business credit. She can't figure out what it is and what's going wrong. So that's probably the biggest mistake is not checking. And related to that, I would say that the other mistake that we've seen a lot in 2020 is just that so many businesses, especially smaller businesses, sort of operate just, they wing it. They don't really have a system for keeping their bookkeeping up to date. They might be mixing their business and personal finances, using a single bank account for both. And hey, I get it. I know I'm in finance, but I don't consider myself a numbers person. And I was a business owner for 10 years and I hated doing my books and keeping up with all that, but I had to make peace with it because it's just part of what you have to do to be successful as a business owner. But it can also help you when it comes to getting financing or, taking advantage of opportunities. And I do think in 2021, we're going to see a lot of opportunities later in the year for small businesses.
Right. So separate your bank accounts. That's, I guess you're saying a key thing. Have a
Yes.
business bank account and the personal bank account. And then in terms of the accounting, a lot of small business owners use things like QuickBooks. What do you recommend from a sort of, keeping the books perspective.
Yeah, use any of those QuickBooks, Zero, FreshBooks. I don't care what you use, just keep it up to date.
Hmm.
We saw this with this latest round of PPP, where business owners could choose to base it on their 2020 or 2019 business, information. But a lot of them were saying, "Well, I haven't even talked to my accountant about 2020." They couldn't even figure out how much they could qualify for based on 2020 information because they weren't doing their own, they weren't keeping up with the book. So you can certainly outsource it to a bookkeeper if you want. But I do believe strongly, based on our experience this year, that business owners should make sure someone is keeping the books up to date on a monthly basis. And you, as a business owner, you want to look into that at least once a month. So at least you have a pulse on what's going on financially in your business. And then when that opportunity comes up, then you're ready for it.
Right. So you've written about, simple ways to organize your small business finances and, top 10 reasons you can't get your finances in order. What are some of the simple tips to help small businesses get their finances in order?
Well, I think first is just embrace the idea that this is just part of your doing your business, because a lot of business owners are great at what they do. They're not, so they didn't get into business to do accounting. That wasn't what they chose to do.
Hmm.
But if you find a way to set up a system, and again, that could be partnering with a bookkeeper, it could be working with a financial coach, it could be taking a class on
Hmm.
QuickBooks yourself, but
Mhm.
finding a way to embrace that side of it, and keep up to date with it. Don't let it fall behind. And I can tell you, Gordon, that I fell into this trap when I was a small business owner. I'd be catching up on my bookkeeping, and then I could look at a deposit and say, I don't remember which client that was from. Well, that's not good, right? You need
Mhm.
to know. So you want a system that, on a regular basis, you're able to stay up to date on what's going on financially. And then that just makes everything else sort of fall into place a lot easier.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the financing side, because you're an expert on that as well, I think. And businesses, need money, especially early stage ones. What are some of the things you recommend in terms of the best ways to raise money? We talked at the beginning about the government loans. Obviously, a lot of businesses taking advantage of that now. What about outside the government? Should they go for debt? Should they go for equity? What are the kinds of things you tell people to look for?
Yeah, there are a lot of decisions to be made when it comes to getting financing, and so many choices now compared to when I
Mm,
had my business,
mm,
a decade ago. So it can feel overwhelming at times, but I think the key to keep in mind is that the better prepared you are, and the earlier you look for financing, the more choices you're going to have. And I'll give you a quick example. I was on a webinar with accountants, and one of them reached out to me afterward, and she said, I have this business on the side selling Pandora jewelry on eBay, and a local jeweler is going out of business, and I can acquire all this inventory. The price
mm,
is good. I know I can sell it, but and it was a lot of money. It was several $100,000. I need X amount of money ASAP to buy it, or he's going to sell it to somebody else. So that's the kind of situation where, if you're prepared ahead of time and you have an idea of what's out there, what's out there for your business, if you've maybe looked at financing options, you have a line of credit, for example, then you can jump on that opportunity. Otherwise, you might miss out on the opportunity. And so what I've often said to business owners, you want to look for financing before you need it, because whether it's a crisis, and we know about crisis this year, or an opportunity, you want to be prepared to be able to take advantage of that. And so that's one of the things we do at NAB, is just to help businesses get ready, see what's out there right now for your business. And then if there's a weakness there, like your credit score, business or personal, or your revenues, then work on that so that you're better qualified for better financing in the future.
right. Are there many businesses, smaller businesses, that still finance their businesses using their credit cards? Is that still, a
Very
common thing?
popular. Yes,
Uh-huh.
very, very popular.
But you shouldn't do
Uh,
that, right?
Not necessarily. There's
Mm,
times when it makes sense. A couple things to keep in mind. One is that the good news is that some of the small business credit cards don't report to your personal credit. So if you do need to carry some debt for a while, it's not going to sink your personal credit score. So that's good. The other thing to keep in mind is that most of these business credit cards are available to startups. So you start a
mm,
business, and as long as you have decent personal credit, you can probably get the credit card. And
mm,
that could be a kind of financing where startups have more limited options. The downside that you have to watch out for is that they aren't covered by the same consumer protection laws as consumer credit cards. And so if you're a day late or really an hour late with your business credit card payment, your interest rate could skyrocket. That
mm.
can't happen on your consumer credit card. So you do want to make sure that you have systems in place to at least make that minimum payment on time so you don't end up with a higher interest rate. But it's a very, very popular type of financing, and I'm not opposed to it as long as it's used responsibly.
Hmm. Any recommendations for particular credit cards, or the typical names people hear are all good? American Express, Mastercard, Visa, and those
Yeah,
kinds of
yeah. Well,
things.
at NAV, we work with all the major business
Hmm.
credit card issuers, matching borrowers to them. But I do have I can give out a short link. If you go to nav.com/reports with an S on
Hmm.
the end,
Hmm.
that will give you a list of all the major credit card issuers and how they report to personal credit. So if you're looking for one that isn't going to affect your personal credit, that might be a decision, factor for you. There's also this new category of cards that are tied to more like expense management. So Brex, Divvy, Ramp. These are all cards that are trying to help you make all your purchases on their card and get rid of expense reports. So it's kind of an intriguing submarket of the business credit card world, and they're offering a lot of incentives for people to get started with those cards. So that may be another option that you might want to look out for, especially if you have employees and you're sick of dealing with expense management and
Hmm.
permissions and all that stuff.
We're going to get into the discussion around crime, cybercrime, identity theft, those kinds of issues, which often we think about from a consumer perspective, but they're really important regarding small businesses. Gerri, I think recently I've heard there was a big hack or issue involving a company called SolarWinds that was in the news. And now just this week, we heard about something involving Microsoft Exchange that's, I think, going to hit or touch millions of people and probably businesses as well. So if you're a small business owner, this whole issue of cybercrime sounds very scary. What should you do?
Yeah, so cybercrime, certainly protecting your business against hacks that could expose customer data and potentially put you out of business. I mean, let's be real. Many small businesses would not be prepared for that scenario. Is certainly something that businesses need to address. If you have any kind of customer information at all, you need someone who's advising you and probably some insurance to help protect your business in the event of a data breach or a hack. But the other side of that is that small businesses are also at risk of identity theft. So we've had warnings come out recently from the National Cybersecurity Council, from the Internal Revenue Service, Krebs on Security, which is one of the leading security blogs, have all warned that business identity theft is on the rise and it's a
Hmm.
growing problem. So your business could find that someone else, a crook, actually opens up accounts in the name of your business, purchases things, and never pays for them. The problem on the business side is that most businesses aren't checking or monitoring their business credit. So they have no idea that their address has been changed or there's a new account or
Hmm.
something like that. And so they don't catch it right away. On the consumer side, hopefully you're monitoring your personal credit. I was a recent victim of identity theft for the second time, and I caught it because there was a suspicious inquiry that popped up right away. But on the business side, if you're not checking, you won't know. And so this is something where even if you're listening, you're thinking, I'm not going to finance my business. I'm going to bootstrap. I am debt averse, which many business owners are. At least I would encourage you to check and monitor your business credit so that if you see something unusual happening, you can act quickly and shut it down before it becomes a big headache. Remember, on the business side, there's so few regulations that if a debt collector, if your account ends up with a debt collector, they can call your friends, your relatives, everybody, and talk about how you're a deadbeat, and that's not something your business wants to have to go through.
So what's the tool? What's the software? What's the subscription that the small business should use to protect themselves? I hear a lot about VPNs. That you hear one company, ExpressVPN, advertises a lot for small businesses. What should they use to protect themselves?
Yeah, typically it's a suite of things that you'll use. So the VPN is going to be used to try to protect your business against, someone picking up information that's
Hmm.
being transmitted. And then, of course, antivirus software, anti-malware software, educating your employees so they're not accidentally giving out sensitive information, which is a common source of a breach. And then probably, again, for most businesses, you want some sort of data breach or cybersecurity insurance policy, and then they
Okay.
can give you some pointers on what you need to do so that you're protected and able to collect if that should happen. The other thing I would recommend, a shameless plug here, but at NAV, we will help you monitor your business credit for free, and we're the only place you can do that. So you can check and monitor your business credit reports with Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian for free at NAV. And if there's something suspicious, hopefully get it locked down quickly. The final tip I'd say is that on the side of the IRS, a business tax fraud is on the rise as well. So you could have someone who files a return in the name of your business and gets money from your business, and you haven't filed your tax return.
Oh my God.
I would have been at high risk for this 10 years ago because I was always on extension
Mm.
in my business. But you can actually contact the IRS now, and they have PIN numbers that you could use to help lock down your file. This is new. Usually it used to be only if you were a victim of fraud, but you can do it proactively. So I would recommend having a PIN number with the IRS as well to help protect your business.
Wow. Okay. You were talking to me at the break about using business credit to protect yourself against other businesses. Sounds like you've had some experience with that issue yourself in the past. Can you explain?
Yeah, I did. So I got into a joint venture with another business that looked very successful. The deal was I would create the product, they would market it, and then we would share the revenues.
Hmm.
Well, then the money was going into their account, not mine. So they collected all the revenues and I never saw a penny. And it was at least 40 grand that I know of, probably more. An attorney basically told me it wasn't worth pursuing. So long story short is, for any business, you need to think about and check into the financial health of the companies you do business with, whether you're
Hmm.
providing a good or service. If you provide anything upfront without getting paid upfront in full, you're basically a lender. It could be your time. In my case, it was my time, but it was a lot of time and it was valuable time. It could be other things, the product that you sell. Then if you're dealing B2B, you might want to check business credit. You could also check business credit on key suppliers so that if they went out of business and your business would be at risk, if they're having trouble and they go out of business, maybe that puts your supply chain at risk. So there's a number of ways that you can check business credit in order to help protect your business from others. And finally, I'll just add one more comment there. If you have a business partner and you think you're going to do any kind of financing together, you guys need to talk about credit, because any bank is going to require a personal credit check on all the owners, usually 20% or greater ownership. Sometimes it's 25%. And if their credit is bad, it could get you knocked out of the consideration for that financing. So you need to, it's not an easy discussion to have, but if you have a business partner, you also need to share your personal credit scores with each other and discuss any problems with your credit.
Hmm. Great tips. Well, we're just about out of time. This has been super interesting. And I did want to ask you a couple of questions more about your own personal interests. We always like to hear people such as yourself at the small business space who are doing so much. What do you do sort of in your free time? So one question for you is, are there any books or podcasts that you might recommend to our listeners who want to get smarter, either about business, about finance, or just about life in general?
I am such a podcast junkie. My list is so long. I'm trying to think of one podcast. I mean, You should see my list. I walk every morning and every evening, and
Okay.
that's what I do is listen to
Well,
podcasts.
throw a couple of names at us.
Yeah, so I have a very long list. Well, I'm also interested in travel and downsizing. That's something that I've done
Okay.
recently.
Mhm.
So, gosh, I'm feeling really bad at names right now. I did listen to, I'm a big fan of some of the common ones like Freakonomics, but I also
Mhm.
listened to some other podcasts about travel
Mhm.
and I'm going to be traveling in an RV this summer.
Mm,
So, and trying to work remotely. So I've been listening to the RV Entrepreneur podcast. There's one by name.
that's cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. My interests are very eclectic.
Huh.
Living in Norway is a new one I'm listening to because my daughter's going to grad school in Norway. So I'm
Okay.
all over the place.
Uh-huh. Very good. And in terms of books, I mean, you've written 5 of them yourself. So what's your most recent book?
My most recent book is Finance Your Own Business, which I wrote with small business attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that's a good one for people to read. And then in terms of your own success, you've run a business. You're obviously very well versed in this topic. You talk to small businesses all the time. What are your own personal traits or habits, your kind of personal regime that you observe that you think has contributed to your success? Do you get up super early in the morning or you work in the afternoon? Like what's your daily rituals?
I am not a morning person, but I'm trying to adapt to it, just like with the finance thing, adapt to it and make it work. So I am doing a daily short yoga practice, a walk every morning after the coffee, and that does help me get settled for the day. The other thing that I've recently started doing that is helping is to write first thing in the morning so
Mm,
that at least I know that I have gotten some of my writing out of the way, and that
mhm,
definitely sets my day up for more success. It's
mm.
very difficult once the day starts going to have that block of time where I can really focus and concentrate.
Yeah, yeah, understand that. Once the phone starts ringing, the emails start coming in, it's hard to stay focused on what it is you set out to do.
Yes.
Yeah, understand. Well, Gerri, you have been an awesome guest. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, tell a friend or a colleague to subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. We would really appreciate it. Until next time, make it a great week.